My name is Dr. Richard Abbey. We're going to talk today about how to unleash your child's brilliance with ADHD. And I'm going to condense about a decade of learning experiences in hopefully about 30, 40 minutes. And we'll have time for questions at the end. I had this amazing discovery, and really, what is this all about? So if you've tried to unlock your child's potential without medication in the past, don't worry, it's not your fault. The majority of people, teachers, psychiatrists, like a lot of people don't know how to do this. But if you're wondering if you can actually do that, you absolutely can. And working directly with pharmaceutical companies, we can't be so sure that's what they want either. In fact, they're in a for-profit industry. But that's, if you're listening to this, hopefully you're on the same page, because that's what we want. Medication is not going to solve everything. We're going to talk about that. But the main thing we're going to talk about is really how to do this. Changing your child's neuron power, like doubling their brain power, connecting everything in the brain. We're going to talk about it. Sounds like a lot. It's not. And there's ways to do that with modern technology that if you can do that, you can boost things like elevating their self-esteem and having them chase their own dreams. There's no barriers in the way anymore. Having them become independent and really having this family balance while you're going through the training, but also throughout life. And it's a beautiful thing. So you may be wondering who I am. My name is Dr. Richard Abbey. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist. So I learned all about clinical psychology and therapy first, went on for more specialty training in neuropsychology, got my dream job at Stanford. I'm going to tell you my story in a minute. Along the way, I got board certified in things like brain mapping and various forms of brain training. And I assembled a team. I took some people from Stanford, and here we are across the street in Palo Alto doing some amazing things. I've got a number of publications. The one that's most relevant to you would be the Untapped Potential book that really talks about this. We're going to go into more depth here. Now, why I have this slide here is I want to make sure you understand, and I know this, I'm standing on the shoulder of giants. I had the opportunity to train with some of the best people in the world, including Russell Adams running the top neuropsychology internship in the country, Douglas Riss running the top pediatric neuropsychology, and he really started me thinking about alternative ways to help children that were really in need. Robin Hilsebeck, kind of chance meeting, playing softball with her. Turns out she was the president of the National Association of Neuropsychology and really helped me not only in softball, but actually get my career started. And some of the giants, it's just all these things came together for me. I feel very fortunate. Barry Sturman started doing some of these things in the 1960s, working with NASA and other things. Hans Steiner. My office just happened to be across the hall from him at Stanford. And next thing I know, I'm giving him an office in my private practice. And we became good friends over the years. Professor Emeritus at Stanford, one of the most prolific psychiatrists in the entire, well, really world, over 500 journal articles. Bob Thatcher, a genius level genius, creating things that we use today in brain training. Here's us having fun, but me having fun with some of the giants, including Nick Dogres, who's created some amazing techniques, and Harry Karasitis, a neurologist who's been doing a lot of these things over time. And one of the bass players over there is actually formerly with Aerosmith, but he left the band before they got famous. I thought that was pretty funny, but that was me on the drums jamming. Joe Lubar, we just lost him recently, just prolific, been doing ADHD work since the 1970s, professor emeritus at University of Tennessee. And I mention these things because these are the guys that I pick their brains, I learned from. I didn't start on the path of, I'm going to be a faculty at Stanford. I was one of these kids that would go to class at ADHD, dyslexia. I never read anything. I showed up. I learned from the teacher, probably learned more in the test than I did from the classroom, and never really read any books. Not doing so well in college, and then it was all taken away from me. I had a head injury. Long story short, my head hit the steering wheel because I had this old Willys Jeep with just a lap belt. And now there's no option to go to school. I couldn't remember things for 5 years. And for me, that had to be taken away. And why I mention this is because as an adult with ADHD and dyslexia, like, how do you overcome that? Some of the things I learned over time, I'm going to share those things with you. Started rehabbing my brain. And some of the things that I did even later made it such that I could do even better. I go back to school. Now, after I've learned how to start rehabbing my brain and continue to do that in undergrad, I'm a 4.0 student. I go to the top clinical neuropsychology program in the country. And I end up with my dream job. But guess what? I'm working until 2 o'clock in the morning because I'm inefficient. And so on I go, learning about different forms of brain training. And I became efficient. And I couldn't believe what I discovered. And I discovered a way to strengthen my brain, just like I would strengthen my body, and overcome these things, overcoming my own dyslexia, my own ADHD. As an adult, that's really hard to do. As for a child, it's, give them a Pokemon card. They're going to pretty much do whatever we want them to do. And if you make it fun, it's an amazing thing. And so how does my story apply to you? Look, if I can do this as an adult, and if you care so much about your child, part of my story is wanting to provide this for my own children. So I kept driving this thing. And if you had the opportunity, you had this advanced degree and you could go all over the country and pick the brains of these experts for over a decade, that's what I did. So I'm going to save you the time and effort, and I'm going to tell you what I found because it's pretty amazing. And one of the myths out there is like, all we got to do is manage our symptoms, our child's symptoms with medication, and we get a lot of pressure to do that. But that's actually, no matter how you manage them, that's not the most important thing. These things are temporary. Managing them will only go so far. We can't follow them to college or the rest of their life. So I'm going to tell you how to do this so it's permanent and this new developmental trajectory. By the way, I'm a little sick, but for those of you who showed up, I wanted to carry this message for you because it's my life's work, and it's the most important thing if you have a child that is having difficulties. Because we'll talk about the window of time, but you don't have this indefinite window of time to help them. Medication-free treatment, some people think is ineffective. It doesn't last. It's not as powerful. It doesn't last a long time. It is. And this is part of what I discovered. You can't just do one thing for everybody. And we'll talk about how I discovered that. Here's an amazing case study. An 8-year-old child, this is very recent. 8-year-old child comes in, ADHD, math problems, barely making it in the low average range. And we work with this young man. And he not only overcomes his ADHD, but I just went to the school meeting a couple months ago, and he went in his math from low average to high average in 18 months. And they have the stats on this. It's not the school stats, it's national stats. That rate of learning was at the 99th percentile. That means if you line 100 people up, he was like, there's one person ahead of him, and then everybody else is below him in terms of their rate of learning. This is a kid with a math problem and ADHD. I know of no other way to do that, but the methods we're going to talk about today. And it's not magic, but it's pretty amazing is what it is. But it's neuroscience. That's all it is. And so what you got to understand to really get a hold of this is we have to look at the power of the brain, the energy, what is it doing, and its efficiency. And I want to explain this in ways that makes a lot of sense to you, because if you really get that part, if you really understand what we're talking about with increasing the power and the connectivity in the brain, your child's brain is going to be more efficient. They're going to get more traction. And that's what it's all about without medication. And here's the key. And prior to being able to understand this, my child with ADHD, they're great. And ADHD makes them great. And I'm telling you right now, as a neuropsychologist looking at all the strength and weakness profile, there's nothing great about having ADHD. And there's nothing about ADHD that makes your child great. Your child is great, and they have ADHD. And if we can strengthen those areas that are lagging behind in development, and what I mean by that is there's certain areas of their brain that just aren't developing as fast as other areas. And we know how to find those things. And more importantly, we know how to strengthen them. So if you can find the areas that are like causing distractibility, impulsivity, procrastination, and you make a plan like you would like weightlifting or anything else, you can strengthen them and overcome them. And if you wait till the end, you're going to see how your child is going to be even stronger than if they never had ADHD before by strengthening their brain. It's pretty amazing because they built some things up along the way that they weren't even aware of to compensate. So here's an example of what I mean by energy. So you can see the one on the left, the little boy, there's not enough light. There's not enough energy. That's not ideal. And on the right, there's too much energy. And in the middle is just right. So you want energy that's like efficient, just right. Not too much, not too little. And if you can look at a neuropsychological profile or what the brain is doing, it's like looking at a weather map. And maybe your child's doing okay in first or second grade. But if you got the weather map, the forecast on the left, you know what's going to happen. At least I do. With a brain like this that moves into like fifth to sixth grade, and they have to keep track of all their classes and all their homework versus the one on the right, you can predict things are going to be pretty good. And a lot of people don't really understand. Hopefully you can see my cursor. What are we talking about at the second percentile down here? Here's the average range, and here's the second percentile. A lot of kids that have strengths are even higher than that. So you can see like when we're identifying things like in a brain map, so I'm going to drink because I'm got a scratchy voice. So these areas that are identified lagging behind is like these little teeny guys down here. That's how far those areas are different from normative average. On the right is a brain that's perfect, that's running with perfect energy. And we're not striving for perfection, but we're helping where we want to give our children more energy where they need it so they can go about life without struggling so hard. And if it were easy to do, why wouldn't we do that? And it's actually not that hard. It takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. When we're talking about pathways in the brain, the way the brain from neuron to neuron or hubs of neurons, different hubs of neurons, the pathways are very important. They have to be developed or what we call myelinated. And we won't get into the neuroscience of that, but if you have really small pathways versus big pathways, it's going to make a huge difference. Or when you think about pathways, network coverage on a cell phone, you want really good coverage to be able to use your cell phone and not repeat your conversations and have efficient conversations. The same thing is with the brain. Or a dirt pathway to grandma's house versus a 8-lane superhighway. That's what other kids are developing for their attention, their executive function networks and all these things. And can we do something to do something like that on the right? Absolutely, we can. If we can send somebody to the moon and future into the Mars, come on. It's about time we start using modern technology to help our children have better lives. So when we're looking at neuroimaging, on the left is like dirt roads. These are all the opportunities we have in this young person's brain to make them better. On the right would be an image that shows that somebody, like there's great pathways. There's not a lot of work to do there. And then the third factor is information flow. Like how fast is it flowing? Is it just trickling? Is it taking a while? Is it like all these things coming at you and you're having a hard time processing the information? Or is the flow really good, smooth, and strong? Is there a traffic jam? Or are there different overpasses and different networks in the freeway system? On the brain on the left, you can see that there's a lot of dysregulation in terms of the speed. And this brain mostly is going too slow. Some of it's going too fast, reflected by the reds and yellows versus the blues. And in this brain, you're seeing a very efficient brain moving at the speed that it should to process information efficiently. So here's the key. By identifying the areas of your child's brain that are lagging behind, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, what are the opportunities? That way we can develop a customized program for your child to build those areas up to the ones that are already optimized. If you can do that, they're going to be the best version of themselves. We're not trying to build like the next, Harvard or Stanford student. And sometimes we do. Sometimes the kids we work with go to Yale and Okay. But that was their potential. And if they go there with a brain that's inefficient, it's rough. It's really rough. Even for these really smart kids, you're going to school with these really smart kids that have an efficient brain and you have ADHD, it's not an even playing field. Look, if I can do this to myself, I'm 57 years old. I did this, about 15, 20 years ago. So somebody in their 40s, like you can do this with an 8-year-old. They have way more neuroplasticity and we can help your child overcome. Why surface solutions are not enough, like supplements or diets or medications. It's a temporary fix. They don't address the problem. And the real problem, no matter what you look at, there's no argument in the neuroscience. It's a lag of development in certain areas of your child's brain, not a lack, right? A lagging. They're not developing as quickly. And the misnomer is like a developmental delay. Why that's inaccurate is because they don't catch up in the end. Our brains develop rapidly if you're a boy until you're 30, if you're a girl till you're 25. And that's all you get. So if you have ADHD, it's not like, okay, 35, 40 years old, all over. No, you don't. Maybe you're not super hyperactive and all, but you still have these issues. And we see this in Silicon Valley where these young people hitting the glass ceiling. Your child's brain will steal from other areas. Did you know this? If they're trying to compensate, they're going to maybe build a stronger memory system because they can't overcome their attention. They're going to do some things that will help them compensate. And there's cost to that. If we're like running around to all these tutoring sessions and doing all these things, we're not socializing, but we can actually improve that and you can help. And you might be thinking, this is way too complicated. There's no way I can do this. Look, we do all the work. We make it simple for you. If you got 5 minutes to either drop them off here, or we actually have a lot of our clients love to do this at home, even when they live 10 minutes away from us or 300 miles away from us, we can help you do this because we work one-on-one with your child. We are the ones that take care of it for you. You don't have to do this. There might be a little bit of setup. So you might be thinking, can I really improve without medication? And what we have to do is shift into a belief in your child's ability to learn, if they can learn, right? Can they learn if they're given a chance to improve their functioning, to focus, to sustain their attention, to plan, to organize? Yes. And I'm here to tell you, it's not by just teaching them about how to use a calendar and all those things, but to go deep inside and help them increase their brain power and connectivity, and they can overcome these things for life. And it's a substantial impact. And if it wasn't, I wouldn't even do this stuff. So what else? Is it too complex? It's complex, but the complexity is on us. We make it simple for you to understand, and it's not complicated for you to. What we do, because our programs are very nuanced, is we design them specifically for you, something that would work for the age of your child and the level of technology that you're going to feel comfortable with. Let's see. So dispelling doubts, non-medication ADHD strategies. There's tons of studies that show this. No, here's the problem with the studies. They take large groups of people and do one thing with a homogeneous group of people and say, let's see, does it work or not? And it would be like, does weightlifting increase body strength? And you're like, okay, let's take one group of people, 90-year-olds, and put them in a gym and say, okay, now you got to do the clean and jerk powerlifting. That's silly. Okay, let's do that with 3-year-olds. Let's do that with 8-year-olds. That doesn't work. You got to nuance a program. You go to any gym and there's 50 pieces of equipment. I can make you stronger. You got to show up and you got to do the program that's specific for you. And you might want to hit this at multiple angles from multiple different ways to do that. If you do that, you're going to get stronger. If you do something like that for your brain, you're going to improve your functioning, period. So think of a soccer team. If you had a soccer team and you got the goalie and you got the people trying to shoot the goals and passing back and forth, and the goalie was terrible, you're going to lose the game unless you strengthen that. Can people dribble the ball or can they pass and shoot? You would have to strengthen the team. You don't have any weak players, or if they were weak, you bring them up. And so you're going to have this winning team. And that's all we're doing. Why wouldn't you do that if you could do that for your child? What your child needs to think is, ooh, I'm playing games and this is fun. And not to paint it like it's playing the Xbox. It's not. But is something that they get to watch video games or play challenging games to strengthen their brain with a trainer, or even making movies work with their brain, which is pretty cool. So if they can do those things and we're making it fun, then they can improve. Let's see, what are the risks? Here's the thing, and I didn't understand this until we started doing this, and kids would come back and maybe they didn't do the program and they wanted to do it later. Their parents did. And now they're 15. They're like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm a teenager. I know it all. I'm not doing anything you tell me. So there's this kind of point in time where you can intervene where it's a lot easier. You're 8 years old and I'm going to give you this Pokemon card for doing a good job, or you're going to get points, or just because I asked you to do it. We're going to go to this thing and work with the trainer, and they like that interaction. What we want to do is help our children strengthen their brain before they falsely conclude, like, I'm not good at academics, or they start feeling bad about themselves. Because when you're really bright and you have these areas of weakness, you start to falsely conclude, like, maybe I'm not as smart as this guy because they just turned in their homework. I didn't get it done yet. Or why is this person like out playing? I'm still doing my homework and they're turning the test in. I guess I'll turn mine in so I don't look stupid. These kids start to get these negative messages. Even teachers like, sure, you lost your homework again. You probably didn't do it and you're not trying hard enough. And you do that for so long. A kid that's 6, 7, yeah, they're fine. It's all bouncing off of them year after year. And so we need to do this before they really start getting these negative messages and feeling bad about themselves. Because then you have other things going on and you really don't want that. The other thing is this learning gap. Other kids are transferring from learning to read, reading to learn, and absorbing all this information from books that they read and lectures that they do and all their interests. And children with ADHD, if you've reread a page multiple times, reading's not so fun. And I'm looking out the window and I'm not gleaning all the information. So one child is like building all this information up, and maybe not so much for the child with ADHD, even though they're sitting in the same classroom reading the same books. Now, there's tons of research on this stuff, like we talked about before. Posner is huge in attention. Klingberg, all the way back to 2000, he was a researcher at Stanford, and now at the Karolinski Institute, which is a huge research institute in Sweden. Thatcher, who I mentioned before, has done hundreds and hundreds of studies. They're all out there. When I had a recent physician come to me, and I mean, he's had ADHD and he was really afraid. He didn't know what to do. He's one of the world's top doctors. He does everything, and he even has supplements and all these different things. I don't know what to do to help my children. We helped him out. And not only did he do it himself, but he signed up his whole family to do this. And he was just telling me a couple of weeks ago that a child came to him, and they're about halfway through the program, and he just read 8 books. And not only did he not know that his child was reading independently, but when he saw the books, he didn't know that his child could actually read at that level and had those interests. So it's really cool, man. When you start to see kids love the learning process, instead of kicking, yelling, and screaming like, I don't want to do my homework, instead of taking 10 minutes, it takes 2 hours of fighting to get it done. When you start to see them love the learning, you sit back, you've won. And that's an amazing thing. And that's where he's headed with his own children. So you might be wondering, like, why isn't everybody doing this? There is just not this awareness. It's not a pill you can make for 10 cents and sell for $5 and make billions of dollars, right? There are universities throughout the world doing this stuff. And here's just a small sampling of, they're doing research projects. Again, if you're in this homogeneous group, you can get in there and they're looking at these things. Universities all over the world doing similar types of things and doing one study for one thing for one group of people. Hospitals and medical centers looking at all these things, and even the U.S. military doing a lot of these things for special operations and to make their soldiers better. Quite amazing when you actually look at some of these things. In the world of brain training from 2005, we're somewhere around $2 million for a projection in 2031 to $56 billion. Like I said, that window of time, we can't wait 10, 20, 30 years until it's common knowledge and everything, because our kids are not going to do that. trust me, it is from experience, is very rare to see an adult push themselves in the way they need to be pushed, show up. And it's pretty easy when you have a caring parent that will make sure that they're doing some of this stuff a couple times a week. How would the Transformative Brain program be tailored to my child's specific needs? Because we look specifically, what are those areas that are lagging behind from a performance standpoint? Take some tests. Maybe you've had some done for like learning and memory and attention and executive function. See what's going on in the brain, come up with a program that fits your lifestyle, that fits your budget. The only way to help your child get better, like permanently, is to help them grow their brain faster than it was growing on its own, because these areas were lagging behind. And we work with your healthcare professional. We'll keep them up to date on that. And they get pretty excited because they're not sure how to help these kids either. They go through medical school, they have 10, 20 years of training, and they can't afford the time to go out into the space and learn all about these things. But they get pretty excited when they figure out ways to help children. Here's another truth that I want to tell you about, and that is medication. A lot of people don't understand. If you take medication, it's not like you take it and your brain heals and you don't have to take it anymore. It's temporary. It gets in your child's system. It lasts several hours and then it wears off. When is that? Like in the afternoon class hours? Is it usually by then, or like by the time we're doing homework? I could do a booster, but then you're concerned about like poor appetite, insomnia, some of these things. I looked up research recently that was a little bit alarming, that the kids who took medication for long periods of time, that group compared to the group that didn't 30 years later were 1.25 inches shorter. And there's some things that happens, but the real thing is it doesn't really affect all their symptoms, just a little bit, and it's only temporary. And part of this I learned from working at Stanford, working along Dr. Steiner. He would send me clients up there. We called them patients. I'd work them up, see what their diagnosis was. If they in fact did have ADHD, I'd say, hey, Hans, take a look at them. Here's the results. And he might put them on medication. And I would retest them. I want to know what got better. And so their simple, sustained attention would get better. Things like processing speed, they were still slow. Things like working memory, the ability to hold on to information in your mind and mentally manipulate it, was still limited. That's a big deal, because if you can't hold a lot of information in your mind and do math problems or creativity and all, that can really limit you. The planning, organization, those things were deficient. Back then, we'd be like, oh, give them extra time on tests and go work with an executive function coach to use a calendar. That wasn't exactly what they needed. They were reporting things like poor appetite. I've heard a lot of stories about their personality being dulled or narrowed down, so they're not their exuberant self. It makes them easier for teachers, but come on, we want our bubbly kids having fun and being able to express their full personalities. I'm sitting across from people and trying to help them, and I just thought, there's got to be more. And that's when I went out and looked for more. This long-term study, this is so interesting. So this was in collaboration with some of the faculty at Stanford and Children's Health Council and different sites throughout the entire country. And they followed these kids who would take medication and what happened to them versus kids who didn't take medication. And what they found were things like most people would stop taking medication after 18 months. When you look at a 3-year follow-up, not only were the kids who were continuing to take medication, they actually started doing worse than before they did medication. You're like, wait, does medication make them worse? No, absolutely not. But what you're looking at is what we call a lag in development, right? Or what we call stagnation. So it didn't help their brain develop quicker, right? Like you can do with certain forms of brain training. And even the long-term studies, now you're not going to find a lot of this stuff because pharmaceutical companies want to sell drugs. They're in a for-profit industry. There's nothing wrong with that, and it helps people. But if you're wanting more than that, it's really important. Reality check on the shortcomings of school accommodation. So in the area we live in, there's private schools, and some people have this idea that, okay, if my child moves from private school to public school, or if they just in private school would give my child accommodations, preferential seating, extra time on standardized tests, then everything will be great. In fact, some of the better private schools around here will have this executive function classroom and they teach them these skills and everything. And it's not so much about whether or not you know how to use a calendar or plan or break steps down. You got to execute. And kids will learn this stuff, but they still don't do it, right? They still get distracted by the shiny thing. Their window of time is like 1 or 2 days. That's why they start studying 1 or 2 days before the test, not several weeks, and they try to get everything done like that. And you start to see, when you see kids follow up. So we work with people and they do the testing, and then we see them 3 years later and we do some follow-ups. We're like, oh, well, you see that developmental lag, that stagnation in their development. It's not like their executive functions are getting worse, but compared to their same age peers, that gap continues to widen. And we test them off medication because we want to see what their brains look like. But even on medication, like I talked about before, you're only looking at simple, sustained attention, maybe short bursts of attention improving. And that's not what we want to see for our children. And they go off to college. Here's the thing. These kids don't take their medication in college unless it's like, I got to study for a test and I'll take it now. It's like, yeah, but you didn't go to half the classes. You didn't read half the books, and now you're cramming, and you're at this amazing college where everybody else is as smart as you, and things are happening, and life doesn't have to be that hard. And the same with the workplace. There's no accommodations. I've actually had people in their 60s, and they're like, yeah, I've got ADHD. I need accommodations at work. And boy, it turns into a whole fiasco with their HR. They're not going to give that to you. We can have debates and arguments about whether or not they should or shouldn't. Workplaces will find a way to get rid of you. And I've seen them do this, and it's a mess. And so if we can do this for our children now, because they're not going to do this for themselves later, it's an investment in them, and it really helps them. Looking at schools, working memory, they actually don't, there's nothing in the school system to help that get better, and processing speed. They might try to coach or train executive functions, but that's not changing that power and connectivity in their brain. And these emotional gaps, they can go from 0 to 60, or they try to keep it together all day, and they come home from school and you're the one who's seeing all these things after school, and you have to deal with them. And if you haven't seen them yet, stick around, because you will. Our kids are trying the best they can, and it's really a difficult thing to keep them together. I've seen this in thousands of children. I've seen it myself. When you overcome this stuff, it's pretty amazing. It's not to say we're not going to have the normal human experience, but having something closer to that than these needless struggles is what we're looking for. Problem-solving limitations. You see these social challenges where, why are my friends having parties and on Facebook or whatever they're using these days, and they didn't get invited? Here's this amazing secret and epiphany that I recently discovered, that actually, because I see so many people come in, they're like, the most common thing is, I wish I would have known this sooner. Everybody says that. Of course you do. You want to help your child as soon as you can. But if you did, you would have missed some things, right? A child with ADHD that has to try to overcome the best they can, and our children are great, they're trying the best they can, they're going to build things like resilience and perseverance, right? And these things are underlying their ability to be superhuman. Now, if they could only overcome their symptoms, strengthen those areas that are lagging behind, and make them stronger, then some amazing, even more amazing things are going to come out, unlike their peers that didn't have to make these struggles, right? So I love this movie. I think I'd cry every time I see it. Forrest Gump, the sweet little boy, heart of gold, right? And he's with his little girlfriend, and the kids are picking on him, and he's got his leg braces, and she's, run, Forrest, run. And I'm getting chills thinking about it. And he's starting to run, and the braces break off, and there's a cloud of dust behind him, and everyone is dumbfounded, like, there he goes. And what happened? He strengthened his legs because he had these braces on, and then he broke free. And when I think about the kids that we work with, my own kids, myself, and they can break free from the braces or the chains that are binding them, some amazing things happen because they've been struggling. And through their struggles, they've been building things up. And when you get to see those things like exceptional resilience, not being afraid to tackle projects multiple times. Why? Because they've had to tackle projects multiple times. They're not afraid to fail because they've maybe not done so well and they've had to do things over, take their homework and fix things, right? But let's say you had a list of all the things that you could see with your eyes. They call it the phenotype, right? My child argues all the time. They never stop moving. They have to start projects multiple times, right? And you're like, when they argue, like it or not, like they're probably becoming a really good negotiator. It's becoming increasingly hard to get them to do their homework, and it could be really annoying. Or they never stop moving, and it's, wow, that kid has tons of energy. You could just hone that, right? Starting projects multiple times, they don't give up. They keep going back after it. Now, if you could then take these things and you strengthen those areas that were weak, and you have this negotiator that's also a good communicator that does his homework on time, you're like, oh, well, like those amazing negotiation skills are going to come in handy now. Or that endless amount of energy that's not excessive now, but it's honed. And it's, well, everyone's going to bed and they're still reading. They're still working on their project. They're the person at work, like everyone's going home at 5 o'clock and they're still like, they got mad energy and they're not even tired yet, right? They increase their level of independence, but they're also willing to ask others and receive multiple perspectives because that's what they've had to do to compensate. So there's a whole list of these things where you can see suddenly somebody who's had to deal with all these things all their life, and they built up these amazing compensatory things. And you take away those things that were lagging behind, those things were causing all the symptoms. You literally have this superhuman version of your child. So not only have they overcome all those weaknesses, but then you get to see that too. And when people are like, I only wish I was here earlier, stay tuned because they're building that stuff up too, if you can get to them in time. What we do now is we have a consultation. And why do we do that? We want to learn what is it about your specific situation, right? What is it about your child? What are you hoping to achieve? What is your budget? And you're going to meet with an expert that has been working with me for many years, who knows all the things I know because we've either developed them together, I've trained them on these things. And they have access to over 40 interventions that are going to be like, here's what your child needs. Here's the best fit. And we're going to monitor those things and help you. But that's what you get is this expert guidance, this detailed kind of history assessment. You're going to find out, is this brain-based? What's going on with my child? Do I have opportunities? And out of that, you're going to get this personalized pathway of what to do. I have clients coming to me and they're like, oh, you're one-stop shop. And it's really, where's the quarterback? So that consultant is your quarterback. You don't have to go to like the tutoring center, your teacher, your pediatrician, a psychiatrist, a psychologist. We've done all that. It's not like you go one thing, you go one place, they do one thing. We know how to advise you. And what astounds me is I haven't seen any center like this anywhere in the world that actually can do this. And so that's what you get is that level of expertise. And I just thought I'd make it a little bit sweeter. So if you've done some assessment, that's pretty cool. We're going to add in a questionnaire so we can look at the symptoms that your child is experiencing. You're going to rate all those and look at all those things. It might be like working memory, planning, attention, all those things. And we're going to put that on a scale for comparison to other, whatever your child is, 8 years old. So you can see what those areas that are lagging behind, at least from a standpoint, so you can get more data. And that's super important because you can start, where are they starting out from? What is the plan moving forward? What do I need to dive into further assessment? Do I want to jump right into different forms of brain training? Do I want more data? And we can show you all those things. And really it's about not only sharpening attention and overcoming hurdles, but all aspects of their life. When we look at children, it's not like, where's that little spot that's for the attention and the anxiety? Everybody's got a different profile. That's why this has to be nuanced and it has to be individualized. And that's why the first step is meeting with one of our experts. How do you put on appropriate brakes for your child? It's like their Porsche 911 with bicycle brakes. Look at the shiny thing. I just went onto the internet to do my research and I'm looking at email and all the things that they're not supposed to be looking at and TikTok and everything. And it's like, you're supposed to research something for what happened. Get back on it, right? Calm the hyperactivity, hone the energy, solve the procrastination so we can do things in a planned and organized way. All those things, we're going to talk to you about how to do that for your child in the plan that would be most appropriate for you. Oh, we're also going to give you my book for free. And this talks about, I co-wrote it with Rachel Little, who's helped co-create a lot of these things. And this is very valuable because it's got not only the things we've talked about, there's some free ways to actually help your child get better. And that's just something you're going to get for doing that. So if you put all this stuff together, if you did a consultation and the book, the whole value is like $14.99. We normally do it for $8.95. And it says $3.95 on here. We're going to knock it down to $2.95. And we're going to give you a week to execute that. Now, there's a link that Colin or Kevin will be putting in below if you're interested in doing that. And what that does is you're going to book a call and Colin or Kevin will get you set up with an expert consultation, get you set up in our system, and you'll be ready to go. And hopefully just the consultation in and of itself. We normally do not offer it at this price ever. I'm not just saying that for this one. We don't do that. But if you're here listening, I know you're motivated and I want to help you change your child's life in the way that I know you can, in the way that we have helped with so many people. Click the link below and set up your consultation, and we'll get you and your child started on transforming their life. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to talk to you soon.